been wearing face masks a lot recently, and so today I thought I'd play with dressing up the face mask just a bit. Instead of cotton fabric, I used satin fabric for the interior of my face mask. It's nice and soft and smooth against the skin. I also added a lace overlay to the front to give my mask a little bit more of a special occasion look. It's a little bit more challenging to work with these fabrics than your regular cotton, but if you're looking for something a little bit different, this might be a good option for you. You can choose either adjustable or fixed ties. I've used adjustable ribbon ties that can tie behind my ears. You can also use adjustable elastic, or if you prefer fixed ties, there's a link below to my other video which will give you more options. Since we're using this fabric for a face mask, you want to make sure that whatever you choose, it's something that you can wash and iron. You're definitely going to want to wash your face mask, and to construct it, it takes a lot of pressing. If the satin that you're using is really flimsy and lightweight, you want to make sure that you use interfacing with it. I'm using Pellon SF101. I'm going to be using satin for both the lining inside as well as the outside fabric, but then I'm going to place the lace over top of the outside pieces. You're also going to want to make sure that you have either ribbon, elastic, or fabric ties to use with your mask. The first thing I'm going to do is press my fabric flat, and I'm going to be using a press cloth. I'm using a silk organza press cloth. I like this type of press cloth because you can see through it. But I do want to make sure that I protect my fabric. I'm going to take my fabric and fold it with right sides together. And I'm going to trace my pattern onto the fabric. You can print the free pattern from my website, which is linked below. There are several different sizes, and I'm going to be making a size medium. I'm also going to be making adjustable straps. Once I have my pattern traced, I'm actually going to use a few pins to hold it in place. Since this is delicate fabric, I'm using my really thin pins. And satin tends to slide a lot, so I want to make sure that it's going to stay in place while I cut. So I'm just going to put a few pins in the center and then cut on my traced line. I'll repeat this process again for the lining. If you're making adjustable straps, you want to make sure that you fold the pattern back at the interfacing line and then cut the same way. For the lace, since it's not as easy to trace, I'm going to fold it in half just like I did before. I'm going to put a pin in the middle to secure it, and I'm going to use a few weights to hold it in place. I'm then going to use my 28mm rotary cutter to cut around the edges. If you don't have a rotary cutter, you can just cut with your scissors. Next, I'm going to fuse my interfacing onto the back of the two exterior satin pieces. Place one of your pieces right side down. Lay the interfacing on top of it so that the rough side is touching the fabric. Cover it with your press cloth if needed. Trim off any interfacing that extends beyond the edge of the fabric. This will help protect your iron. Once your interfacing's been attached, lay your main pieces right side up. Place your lace right side up on top of them. And use a few pins to keep it in place. With lace, I tend to like to weave the pins, so instead of just going up and down, I'll go multiple times to help give it more points of contact. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Then, take your pieces and lay them right side together. Pin again. And this time I'm also going to pin along the front edge. I'm going to stitch along the front curve with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I'll do the same thing for the lining. I'm now going to finger press this center seam open. Just take your fingers and run it along the seam. Since you have multiple layers, this could take a little bit longer on the pieces with the overlay. I'm going to use my seam roll to help me press this. I'm just going to slide it inside the mask and press it open. You can again use your press cloth if you need to. Next, I'm going to clip in the seam allowance at the curve. Repeat the process for the lining. Next, I'm going to add a few pins on the wrong side. You can see that I still have my pins in place from when I attached the overlay to the fabric, but I'm about ready to attach the lining, and I want to keep that lace in place. But when I turn it later, I want to be able to remove the pins easily. So I'm just going to add a few pins from the wrong side. Make sure to keep your pins out of the path of the seam allowance, and then remove those that you originally put in place. Do the same on both sides. Once you've finished pressing both, lay the main fabric right side up and place the lining on top of it. Align up your center seams and pin all the way around. Once you've pinned, we're going to stitch all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but you have to leave an opening to turn. I'm going to leave my opening on the side here. I like to still sew the corners so that I can make sure I tuck it under well later. So I'm going to leave myself about an inch opening on the side. You can leave an opening along the bottom edge if you're making a smaller size or if you'd like a larger opening. Clip the 4 corners and the curves. Remove the pins that are holding the overlay in place. And now we're ready to turn. When you have an overlay, you have to be really careful when you turn. You don't want to reach in and pull it out because then you might accidentally rip your lace. So what you want to do instead is push from the outside. So I'm going to take my lining and my main fabric and pull them apart. And then I'm going to push this end up and out through my opening. But the key to turning these masks is to be gentle. You don't want to force anything, you want to take your time, you want to go really slow, and if you feel anything get caught or snag, you want to stop and readjust. So I'm just going to take my time and very slowly pull this through. And we're now ready to press. I'm going to press along all the edges. I have my iron set to low heat, but you may still need to use a press cloth. And since the temperature is going to be a bit lower, I may have to go over this a few times. When I make my channels, I'm going to draw a line about 1¼ inches from each side. I'm using a heat erase pen for this. And then I'm going to fold over the ends of the mask to touch my line. And I'm going to clip it in place. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. And I'm going to sew it in place all the way from the top to the bottom edge of the mask with about a ½ inch seam allowance. This will fit ties about 3/8 of an inch wide. If you plan to use a tie that's wider than that, you may need to fold it over more. Once your casings are done, you can slide either ribbon, elastic, or fabric ties through the opening to create ties. You can then tie it to fit however you like. I'm going to use ribbon for my lace mask. These masks also fit inside my face mask case. The tutorial for this project is linked below if you're interested. I hope you've enjoyed this project. Happy sewing!